Remember when a sci-fi movie could hand you fake memories, Martian mutants, and still leave everyone arguing 35 years later about whether any of it actually happened? Well, that is Total Recall. In 1990, Arnold Schwarzenegger and director Paul Verhoeven made one of the strangest, bloodiest, and most quotable sci-fi movies of the decade. Arnold plays Douglas Quaid, a construction worker who buys himself a memory vacation to Mars and accidentally uncovers a life full of spies, rebels, mutants, corporate villains, and one very angry fake wife. Sharon Stone, Michael Ironside, Ronnie Cox, and Rachel Tickerton came along for the ride. Plus, enough hand-built practical effects to make every VHS-era kid pause the tape and go, "Wait, what did I just see?" And behind the scenes, the road to getting this thing made was so long, so cursed, and just so genuinely dangerous that it's kind of a miracle it exists at all. And today, we're going to count down 15 weird facts that you didn't know about Total Recall. And stick around for number 1, because Verhoeven buried the real answer in the very last shot, and almost everyone who watched it walked out believing the opposite. But before we get started, hit like and subscribe and share this with a friend who still talks about the three-breasted mutant. Let's get into it. Number 15. 16 years, 40 drafts, and a $1,000 bet that paid off. You know a project's cursed when the cheapest part is buying the rights. In 1974, producer Ronald Schwarzenegger bought the film rights to Philip K. Dick's short story, We Can Remember It, for you wholesale for $1,000. Just a $1,000 bucks, for what became one of the most expensive sci-fi productions that Hollywood ever attempted. Schwarzenegger brought in Dan O'Brien, his co-writer on Alien, to adapt it. They got 30 pages in, and then hit a wall, because Dick's story basically ends there. There's no second act, no third act, no Mars, just a guy, a memory booth, and an abrupt stop. So, they invented the rest, and every studio in town said the same thing. Too expensive, too weird, unfilmable. Then came 16 years of directors cycling through, and a script that piled up around 40 drafts. David Cronenberg alone wrote 12 of them over the course of a year. His own version was darker and stranger and just much closer to Dick until Schwarzenegger told him flat out what they actually wanted was really Raiders of the Lost Ark Goes to Mars. So Cronenberg walked. Patrick Sees stepped up to star under director Bruce Beresford. Sets went up in Australia, and then the company bankrolling the whole thing. The day Lawrence Entertainment Group went broke and took the whole production down with it. Sets and all. That is when Schwarzenegger pounced. He'd been chasing the role for years, and the second that the project came loose, he convinced Caro Company Pictures to buy the rights for a relatively cheap $3 million bucks. He then negotiated himself an $11 million salary, 15% of the profits, and veto power over the producer, director, screenplay, co-stars, and the marketing. He basically bought the movie and then let him shoot it. By the way, Philip K. Dick never saw a single frame. He died in 1982, 8 years before the film came out. The story that he sold for $1,000 bucks went on to gross $261 million. Number 14. The director who invented quad and then quit. The creepiest thing in Total Recall came from the one director who walked away from a movie. The Mutants on Mars. That's all Cronenberg. Quad, the psychic little brother sprouting out of a grown man's torso. Also Cronenberg. He dreamed up the single most unforgettable image in the whole film and then quit before anyone shot a frame of it. Verhoeven inherited the monster and had the good sense to keep it. His version was a little weirder, though. Quaid's hidden identity wasn't a secret agent at all. He was Chairman Mandrel, the dictator of Earth, buried inside a fake life. None of that survived except the mutants. The one part that everyone remembers is the one part that wasn't even Verhoeven's idea. Cronenberg got the last word eventually. 9 years later, he made Existence, all simulated reality and memory implants, and that queasy dread that he did better than anyone. Yeah, it barely registered at the box office, but it's genuinely great. He just had to wait. Number 13. The three-breasted woman was almost a cow. Now, of all the things that people remember about Total Recall, it beats the mutants, it beats the Mars chase scene, it even beats Arnold himself, the three-breasted woman in the Martian bar. She's on screen for maybe 2 seconds, but she's been the movie's mascot for 35 years, and she was almost a cow. The original design didn't have 3 breasts, it had 4. That was Verhoeven's call, and he had a reason, kind of. He said that he saw medical photos back in college of a woman born with 4 nipples, filed it away, and then decided that Mars was the place to use it. The man who saved everybody was Rob Bottin, the effects artist. He looked at the 4-breasted version and pointed out that it had tipped over from sci-fi into something closer to livestock. Lygia Nath, the actress under the prosthetic, put it more bluntly. The feedback was that she looked too boing, like a cow, ready to be milked, and that was not the vibe. So they cut one, and the rest is history. Verhoeven wanted a medical curiosity, but Bottin gave him a mascot. Number 12. He brought his entire RoboCop crew. The moment that Schwarzenegger had the project lock, his first call wasn't to a casting agent. It was to Paul Verhoeven. Now, Arnold had been floored by RoboCop and wanted exactly that flavor. Violent, satirical, beamed in from somewhere slightly off-planet. One problem, though. Verhoeven had other offers and wasn't sure that Total Recall was the one. But Arnold lobbied him personally until he was. Once Verhoeven said yes, he brought the whole gang with him. Ronnie Cox, the corporate snake from RoboCop, came back to play the corporate snake in space. Rob Bottin, who had butted heads with Verhoeven over RoboCop effects, signed up for round 2. So, as did the cinematographer, the editor, and production designer. The villain's seat took a detour. Kurtwood Smith, who played the psycho Clarence Boddicker in RoboCop, was offered Richter and passed, figuring that he'd already done this exact guy once. So Verhoeven handed it to Michael Ironside, who'd been considered for RoboCop and then missed out the first time around. One way or another, the part was going to a RoboCop alumnus. Total Recall was Verhoeven just getting the band back together. Number 11. The entire crew got sick, and 2 people did not. Total Recall shot at a studio's Churubus in Mexico City across as many as 45 sets. 6 months of production, and somewhere in the thick of it, the food and water turned on everyone. Food poisoning tore through nearly the entire crew. Verhoeven got it the worst and refused to leave. They parked an ambulance on set and ran in 4 into him between takes so he could keep directing while his body staged a full revolt. Stopping wasn't an option either. Insurance wouldn't cover his first hospital days, and every day that he couldn't work meant about $150,000 carved out of the budget. So he directed sick on a drip for weeks, and then he had the air. The Mexico City smog was so brutal that associate producer Elliot Schick ended up hospitalized, struggling to breathe. The production designer later said that it was like smoking 2 packs a day. Arnold never got sick, not even once. He learned his lesson, getting wrecked by the water on Predator a couple of years earlier. So this time every meal was catered and flown in from the States. He ate alone. He stayed healthy and watched the production fall apart around him. Ronald Shusett dodged it too, brushing his teeth only with bottled water and taking a vitamin B12 shot every week. The crew gave him some grief for his routine, right up until they were all groaning in their trailers while he wasn't. Number 10. Everyone got hurt, but no one stopped. For a film this physical, injuries were kind of a given. The body count of them was not. For the shot where Quaid smashes a train window, a tiny charge was rigged to blow the glass a beat before his fist arrived, but it misfired. Arnold's arm went through rail glass and opened up his wrist. Stitches, and then back to work. Then he broke a finger on his right hand during another fight, and then finished the movie in a cast. Watch the back half, and that right hand, it's suspiciously absent. It's tucked out of frame shot after shot. You'll never not see it now. Ironside got the worst of it. During a chase, he collided with co-star Michael Champion. He cracked his sternum and popped 2 ribs. He had to spend 3 weeks on the sidelines, and when he was finally cleared, he still couldn't lift his left arm. First thing on the schedule, the elevator brawl with Schwarzenegger. So they tracked down a rib brace that belonged to Raiders quarterback Jim Plunkett, the kind of rig built to lock cracked ribs and a sternum in place. Ironside strapped it on under the costume, and they shot the whole fight. Arnold knew exactly what shape his co-star was in, a man with a cracked sternum held together by a football brace. And they went and filmed one of the most brutal sequences in the film. Anyway, both of them just had to get on with it. Number 9. Quad took 15 people to run and 9 hours to put on. Quad, the mutant resistance leader sprouting out of another man's belly, is one of the most genuinely unsettling things in really all of 90s sci-fi. And there's not a single pixel of him anywhere. Rob Bottin built the whole thing by hand and bolted it onto actor Marshall Bell, who played George, the poor guy who had to carry him around. Day 1, the makeup took 9 hours to attach. The puppet weighed 80 pounds, and running it took something like 15 puppeteers at once, each working a different piece of the face, the eyes, the hands, just to get through one take. Bell has not sugar-coated that week. He barely slept. The rig was crushing, and Verhoeven, never the most nurturing director, barked, "Bombin'," at him in front of the whole crew will. Number 7. The last old-school blockbuster and the first new one. Total Recall sits at a weird intersection in movie history. It's one of the last of its kind and one of the first of what came next both at once. The Mars landscapes, the colony, all those sweeping, establishing shots. Well, every one of them is a physical miniature hand-built and modeled on real photographs of the Martian surface. It's massive, painstaking, done the old way filmmaking because in 1989 there genuinely wasn't a better tool for the job. Nearly every effect in the movie is something that you could have reached out and touched. Nearly though. The standout exception is the X-ray security scene where Quaid and a guide dog stroll through a scanner as glowing skeletons. That was CGI, one of the first photorealistic computer sequences in a mainstream Hollywood film. The team tried to animate it with early motion capture. The mocap flat out failed, and they ended up hand animating the whole thing to make it read like a real X-ray. But the odd part, to build the dog skeleton, they had nothing to scan. So they digitized a wolf skeleton borrowed from the museum next to the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles. A museum skeleton playing a security dog in the year 2084. Make that make sense. One technique was on its way out and the other one was barely born, but they share the same movie. Most of the people in those theaters had no idea that they were watching the ground shift underneath them. Number 6, the futuristic subway was really just a subway. The movie is set in 2084, and most of that world got built from scratch on the sound stages at a studio's Churubus. The futuristic subway, though, yeah, nobody built that. They just borrowed it. That is the Mexico City Metro. The crew rolled in, painted the train cars and walls a grim cement gray, covered up the signage, bolted TV monitors all over the interiors, and then called it the future. The station interiors are Metro Chabacano. The entrance that you see is Metro Insurgentes. Real stations, real trains, just lightly disguised. So, if you ever rode the Mexico City Metro at the end of the 80s and you caught a faint whip of bleak, end-of-the-world dread, yeah, you weren't imagining it. For a little while there, it was doubling as the year 2084. Number 5. Sharon Stone was a nobody. Then she absolutely was not. By 1989, Sharon Stone had been grinding in Hollywood for the better part of a decade. Little parts, forgettable movies, a career stuck in neutral. When Total Recall handed her Lori, Quaid's loving wife, who turns out to be a planted agent who's assigned to babysit him. And then when that fails, kill him. Arnold was just so impressed by her commitment that he started calling her the female Terminator. And the Stuntwomen's Association made her an honorary member. Now, the film stunt team will tell you that it double-handled most of the heavy kicks, and Stone got shot mostly in close-up. But it doesn't matter. She walked away with the better story. Verhoeven also wanted both of his leads to bear more, if you know what I mean, in the early bedroom scene. Arnold, he was game. Stone said no. So he shot it as you see it, and years later on the commentary admitted that he got his own back on the next project together. And that was Basic Instinct. Verhoeven had been watching her play Lori. He clocked the way that she could swing from warm to lethal and back in a single breath. No transition, no tell. That flip is the entire engine of Catherine Trammell. One supporting role in an Arnold movie, and he'd already spotted the star hiding inside it. Number 4, the sequel that accidentally became a Spielberg movie. Total Recall made $261 million, so naturally there'd be a sequel. And for a while, there really was one. The seed was already buried in the first movie when the Martian mutants were hinted to be psychic. Co-writer Gary Goldman grabbed the rights to another Philip K. Dick story, The Minority Report, and the plan reshaped into a follow-up. Quaid running an outfit of psychic mutants who could see crimes coming up and stop them before they happened. By the mid-90s, this thing was real. Arnold was attached to star. Verhoeven was attached to direct, and there was a script that everyone liked. But then Carolco fell apart. The studio was bleeding money on a doomed Geena Davis pirate epic called Cutthroat Island. I can't even believe that was real. It flopped so catastrophically that it helped sink the entire company. Bankruptcy, 1995. So Total Recall 2 went down with everything else. But the underlying Dick story survived. The rights got scrubbed clean of any Total Recall connection and then sold off. They bounced around and eventually landed in Steven Spielberg's hands. It got Tom Cruise out front, and then in 2002 it came out as Minority Report, one of the finest sci-fi films of its decade. The sequel that died with a sinking studio quietly turned into someone else's masterpiece. Number 3. They almost cut Mars out of the Mars movie. Picture Total Recall, with no Mars, no colony, no mutants, no quad, no rebels, no air, just a guy on Earth who thinks that he had a weird dream. That movie almost got made back when Dino De Laurentiis still had the project. He looked at the most expensive part of the script, the Mars finale, where Quaid triggers an alien reactor and gives the whole planet an atmosphere. He decided that it was too hard and too costly to put on screen. His fix was to gut it, change the ending, lose the part that made the story work because Mars getting air was too difficult to visualize. Ronald Shusett, the guy who carried the thing for over a decade. Yeah, he wasn't having it. He fought De Laurentiis on it for weeks and eventually threatened to pull the plug entirely. He'd rather have the movie never get made than watch it get made wrong. And he won. De Laurentiis eventually backed down. He even came around to apologize for the whole fight. The producer who tried to cut the heart out of the movie ended up thanking the one man stubborn enough to stop him. Number 2. Arnold spent an hour on the phone for a stranger. Michael Ironside played Richter like a man perpetually one bad phone call from a heart attack. Off camera, the bad phone calls were real. All through the Mexico City shoot, Ironside kept slipping away at lunch to call home. His sister, Wendy, was gravely ill back in Canada, and he'd phone her every single day. Arnold noticed the pattern, the worried face, the constant calls, and he finally asked who was on the other end. He walked Ironside into his trailer. He set up a conference call, and when he got on the line, and the three of them talked for an hour. The most famous bodybuilder alive coaching a critically ill woman through food and exercise and reasons to keep fighting. And it didn't end when the call did. Ironside found out later that Arnold rang Wendy 4 or 5 more times that week on his own just to check in and pump her up. But seriously though, she pulled through. Ironside told the story for decades, and it still never shrinks. The guy paid to spend the whole movie making Arnold look like a monster. But off camera, he watched him do the kindest thing on the entire set. Number 1. The ending is a lobotomy, and Verhoeven hit it in plain sight. Watch the very last shot. The screen doesn't cut to black, it bleaches to white. That wasn't a stylistic shrug. That was Verhoeven telling you exactly what happened in a language that he figured nobody would bother to read. Black is the safe goodnight. A fade to white in old film grammar means one of two very different things. Someone's waking up or someone's dying. And that's the whole movie in a single color, because those are the only two ways out of the story. Either Quaid is waking up from the vacation he bought, or his mind is being switched off for good. Verhoeven picked white precisely, so both could be true at once. For his money, it's the second one. Quaid is getting lobotomized in the chair, and that glow swallowing the screen is his brain going dark while his face settles into something almost peaceful, almost. And the music was in on it. Jerry Goldsmith named the 6-minute cue that scores the whole triumphant finale, End of a Dream. Not the escape, not victory on Mars, End of a Dream. The composer scoring the hero's big win quietly called at the moment that the fantasy ends. Two men on this production left the same clue in two different languages, and most people walked right past both. There was nearly a version that spelled it out. One more scene back at Recall with a heartbroken Sharon Stone watching the procedure finish. They'd blown so far past the budget, though, that they couldn't afford to shoot it. And someone pointed out that a flat-out downer sells fewer tickets. So the gut punch got cut, and the whiteout was left to carry the whole grim idea alone, which, depending on how closely you were watching, it either does or it completely doesn't. And Verhoeven made peace with it. He knew that most people would file out certain that the muscle-bound hero won. He killed the villain, got the girl, saved Mars. He cast a man famous for walking away from explosions. And the crowd assumed that he walked away from this one, too. The director, though he shot a tragedy. The audience watched a triumph, but both of them are right. And that's as close to a real answer that Total Recall is ever going to give you. And there you have it, everyone. 15 weird and wild facts about Total Recall. Which one surprised you the most? Which one did we miss? Well, drop your comments below and share this video with the one friend who will die on a hill defending their answer. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And until next time, this is Remember When.